Right. You're making a declaration that you're what? You going there. That you wanted ease, right? Perform and performed any of acts listed in the acts and conditions on page 4 of the instruction application, unless what? Okay, so what is this saying? I'm gonna break it down. It's saying you're a U.S. citizen, you're a citizen of the United States or a non-citizen national of the United States, unless you do two things. You do what acts and conditions says on page 4, and you attach explanatory statements. So it's saying that you're a U.S. citizen. You're going to be looked at as a U.S. citizen unless you do what's on page 4 and supply your explanatory statement. See, they did it in legalese to confuse you so you would never get it. And if I didn't break this down, y'all would have never saw that, right? Because they did it backwards. Instead of just saying, hey, listen, if you're not a U.S. citizen, just go to acts and conditions and follow the instructions and give us explanatory statements. They just said it in layman terms. They know we are not lawyers, because this was written by a lawyer to just confuse you, just like the Bible says. Christ has said, you lawyers blind the minds of the people, something to that effect. He condemned lawyers, so this is telling you not to even get a lawyer, right? So they did this to cause confusion. So if they wrote that in the Bible, that means it's been going on for however long. These type of confusing statements. So let's go to acts and conditions. How many people got a passport in here or have tried to get one? Few of y'all. Did y'all ever read the acts and conditions on page 4? Didn't even know it existed, right? There's acts and conditions right there. Can y'all read that? Now, I did a seminar back in, well, it wasn't really a seminar. I'm part of another group, 12 of us, and it was one guy who thought he knew everything. And he was, yo, you can't do nothing over here, because it says here, I'm waiting till they get back, because this is very important. Wait, no, that's fine. I know people got to do their thing. Go ahead and get y'all a snack, whatever. Lauren, you want a snack from over there? You sure? Don't be shy. You know, these things here are the truth. I remember one day I was sneezing, and the papa put me on these. He said, take one of these. It was gone. Everybody back from the bathroom? Huh? I drank 2 bottles of that water. That just ran through me. Imagine doing this for 2 days. 8 hours a pop. I'm out of whack right now because I haven't done one since March, and then after I did one in Charlotte, they shut everything down. I kind of enjoyed that little vacation because I was doing one every month, traveling from different states. You know, I was in Washington, Arizona, Texas. It was wearing on me. Like, man, I enjoy doing them when I'm doing them, but it's just that traveling, the hotel, and I get in and get out. I come in the day before, and then I'm on the plane, hopefully by the evening or the next morning. And it gets taxing. I like being home. Y'all ready? That brother went to the bathroom. This is it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, acts or conditions. So it says you need to, if you haven't done anything here, and if you have, explain it. So it says, if any of the below mentioned acts or conditions have been performed by or applied to the applicant, The portion which applies should be lined out. So what does that mean when it says line out? Right. So it says which applies. See, they even did that backwards. Usually when you line out something, it doesn't apply. Right? Very confusing, right? You think they did that, just because they didn't know what they were doing? They're trying to deliberately deceive you. Right. So you line out. People sit there, highlight. No, it says lined out. And a supplementary explanatory statement under oath or affirmation by the applicant should be attached and made part of this application. Now, I'm going to tell you how crazy people are. I have guys go do my process, go in there and do their explanatories and do their line outs, and the people will sit there and say, you can't do that. You can't do it, right? You tried it before? Right. And the daggone rules say you can do it. It'll say it. No. And then some places will refuse to even take your application. That's why I say do it on religion. Because at that point, they can't shut you down. Now they're hindering with your religious beliefs when they stop you from doing it. So my affidavits are done on religion. You see? Oh. Thank you. So my application is done off religion. So when they start talking that mess, hey, are you interfering with me from practicing my religious beliefs right now? And are you purporting to even teach me law? Because when you go to do the application, people are just there to take the application, verify that you are the person executing this application. That's their own job. Pay the fees and send it off to the Department of State to process, and they're the ones who make a determination whether you're going to get a passport or not. These people are acting like gatekeepers, and they're doing a job that ain't even their job. So when guys call me up, they not letting me. They won't let me. Stop telling me. That's one thing that's irritating me when people call me and say what they won't let them do. I said, listen, you're allowing them not to let you do it. Don't say they say, they say. They can say whatever they want, but if it ain't written on paper and in the rules, then what they say don't mean nothing to me. Because I'm showing you where it says do that. Now, this is the part where most people get confused. And everybody, whether they're trying to be a national or not, need to be in this section reading. When I get to a certain part, you'll see what you need, why everyone should be on this acts and conditions. Okay? So it says, I have not, since acquiring United States citizenship or nationality, been naturalized as a citizen of a foreign state. Let's stop right there. How many people took an oath to be a United States citizen in this room? Where you come from? You born in Georgia. So you went down and naturalized? Okay, so you good. If you ain't do that, if you didn't do that, then you good. All right. Now, military, you took an oath of allegiance to the military, and that you would commit for so many years to be in that service. But once you left that service, you went back to what? Civilian life, right? You go back to the original status. Right. While you're under that contract, you are a U.S. citizen and have to follow all their rules. You're no longer under that contract anymore. But that doesn't mean that you can't still receive your retirement. You still get that money. Whenever it comes to money, get the money. Okay? Don't be talking about I ain't a U.S. citizen, I'm not taking your check. Take that check. Okay? Don't let these fools tell y'all, because most people that tell you not to take the check, guess what? They broke. Okay? And the reason why they tell you, because they want you to be broke like them. You're going to read a lot of poor righteous teachers in this business. Okay? Telling you this. Y'all going to run into them, and a few of y'all might call me and say, well, this guy said this and that. And first thing I'm going to ask you, how is he living? Okay? I live good. Okay? And I don't be ashamed to say I don't live good. I believe in being compensated for my time and my efforts. But in return, I'm going to give you the best information possible to help you. You could do something with what I'm telling you. Some of the stuff I told people in here just liberated some people mentally when it came to debt. Y'all was worried about this thing being on your credit report, and I'm telling you, who cares about a credit report? You don't tell me how good I am. But you just got to know how to work around it. It's always a workaround. Companies come into business. Most companies go out of business within the first 2 years. About 85% of them go out of business in the first 2 years. And a lot of them be out of business. They don't even fill out the paperwork the next year. Like, you know how every year you got to do the Secretary of State paper? They don't even do that. So they out of business just because they don't want to renew the stuff. Right? So why y'all worried? It's nothing to worry about. It's just numbers on the paper. That credit report do not represent who you really are. Okay? You don't want credit under that social anymore anyway. I don't have any credit. I got one thing under my social right now, is just a house that I.
So now is, what are you going to do? You heard what I had to say. And most of all, let's keep it real. I'm only repeating what you've already said to yourself. That's why you're here. That's why you tune in every week. Yeah, I'm only repeating what you already said to yourself. I'm not saying anything new. I might be saying it in a different way. I might be saying it in a different tone. I might be saying it with some force differently. But for the most part, your spiritual self has been knocking you over the head, telling you, hey, what you doing? Hey, 3 o'clock in the morning, get up. Write that thing, that inspirational thought you had. Write it down. Or go act on it. And what do? You look at that clock, turn over, I'll get it later and go to sleep. Akeem, how you know? How you know? You in my bedroom? You can see us? You spying on us? No. I ain't got to spy on you. I ain't got to know. I know how we are. I know what we really are, and we all operate the same way. We come from the same designer. We come from the same designer who designed us to be spiritual and powerful and divine. And the way we get our inspiration is when everybody's calm down and all the negative energy is subsided. That's when, in the wee hours of the night, is when God can really speak to you and get you in that corner and start to talk to you. That's what happens. How you know I can't? Because it happens to me all the time. And a lot of times I listen, and then sometimes I don't. And I always regret when I don't. You have to go through something to accomplish something. Say it again. You have to go through something to accomplish something. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not willing to go through something to accomplish something. It's too hard. That's too much. I hear people say it all the time. Man, that stuff you do, I couldn't do that. Working that hard and making all those phone calls, get those loads. I can't do it. That's too much. Basically what they're saying, it's easier for them to go work for somebody and be told what to do. That's what's easy. I think they just be talking when they say that. They don't really understand what they're saying. It's like Christ said when they had him up there, crucify him, and he said, forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. And I'll say to that, forgive them, Father. They know not what they say. They don't know the consequences of their very words. They don't know. It's that simple. Do you realize that you're receiving your reward of every word that you utter out of your mouth? There's a saying in the church, power of life and death is in the tongue. And that is very true. The power of life and death is in your tongue. The power of success and failure is in your tongue, in the words you utter. Not just the words you utter, the words you think. Because the thinking of the words come before you actually speak it. You have to double down on it, meaning you have to contract with the word before you speak it, right? You think about it, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and you speak it. You think about it, then you decide to speak it. You create a contract with your consciousness. Oh, I accept what this is as the truth, and I'm going to speak it now so that I can solidify it and see that it comes forth. Peace. What's up? It is December the 2nd. Second day of December 2025. Last month of the corporate new year. And then we'll be into January. I just called the venue that I want to have the seminar at. So since no one gave me ideas, I picked my own. So I'm working on a Charlotte destination or venue. I called them today. I gotta call them they didn't return my call just yet. So Charlotte, by the Charlotte airport, it will be the first seminar of the year. I'm trying to do the dates. It's gonna be the dates are gonna be, I think the January the 3rd or the following weekend after that. So whatever that is. I got the calendar right here. January the 3rd or the 10th. Depending on what's available. If that is going to be available. So there it is. Like I said, that's going to be $300 a person. And I'm limiting the attendance. I think it's going to be limited to about 20 people. I'll finalize that and I'll advertise it and give you guys hang on a second. Let's take that hat off. And give you the exact location once I'm done getting all the information. All right, today we're talking about we are the true American Indians. And I got this case. I've actually had this case in my email since 2018. I just never did a show on it. My good friend Marco L sent it to me many years ago and said it was a good talking point. And I went into the archives of my email and found it. And it is a good case. To show how they were classifying us as African American, black. Well, you know, the African American title didn't come until Jesse Jackson ran for president. He made that whole thing. And we ran with it like fools. But I'm going to read this case to you. Let me share my screen. Share. That's not it. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. How is it sharing? There we go. This is the case. It's a short read. So, there it is. American Constitutionalism, Volume 2, Rights and Liberties. Chapter 4, the Early National Era. Hudgins versus Wright, 11, Virginia 138, Virginia 1806. So this happened around 1806. And here's how it reads. Oh yeah, first before I get into this, thank you to the ancestors for allowing me to deliver these messages to you over the years, downloading the information to me. Thank you to God for allowing me to do this, be able to allow God to speak through me. But here it is. Hudgins versus Wright, 11 Virginia, VA, that's what that stands for, 134. It says Holden Hudgins for many years treated Jackie Wright and her children as slaves. Now look at that name, Jackie Wright. It's not what we would consider a American Indian name. Now keep in mind, everything we know about the American Indian, everything we know about the American Indian is what we learned in Hollywood. what we learned in our lying textbooks. Let me turn this music down a little bit here. Or turn it off. Or of what we learned in our lying textbooks. We know those are lies. And what's strange to me that even though we know a lot of that stuff is lies, we still hold on to these narratives of African and American, black, colored, and all this other BS that they labeled us in order to blind us from who we really are. We're the only group of people that they want to say African American. Like, it don't even make sense to be called that. African American, a made up term that Messy Jesse came up with. And his coon self. I know y'all, I know I'm talking about y'all little so-called civil rights leaders. Here's the problem that I have with all our civil rights leaders. If they were so good, how come we still got the problems today? If they really was on our side, how come our family structures is all tore up right now? We are backwards right now. We got the more technology we got, the more backwards we became. We so far apart from each other as a people. More than ever. We were closer together 50, 60, 70 years ago than we are now. Why? Because we allowed the white power structure to colonize our minds with their lying education. So let me keep reading. Hold on. I got to take a sip. When Hudgins attempted to sell some members of the Wright family, Jackie Wright sought a court order prohibiting the sale. Let's stop right there. Let's start using some brain power. If slavery was as they promoted it to be back then, as we know it was we were taught in these indoctrination camps called the public school system, and in Hollywood films, how the hell did Jackie Wright, how did she even get the power to do a petition to prohibit the sale? Who helped her? What lawyer came along and helped her do the paperwork? And an even deeper question, she had to be highly intelligent. Y'all hearing what I'm saying? Hang on, where's my chat? I see y'all in the chat. Okay. She had to be highly intelligent. As soon as he tried to do, oh, wait a minute, hold on. You're not going to do this. We American Indians. She knew the law. That's number one. She wasn't ignorant. She knew something. And slavery could not be as what they said it was. You see? I love info, lawyer, crafty handwork, and passful and clever because they don't want you to have it. That's why they said as a whole can't read. He just busted down all down. Thank you. So, am I off? Somebody, do y'all disagree with what I'm saying? Am I just not thinking about this correctly? For her to be able to file a petition with the court, she had some education. So right there, that debunks the whole slave ignorant narrative that they've been painting on folks for all of these years. Wright insisted her family were Native Americans not descended from slaves. Under Virginia law, this meant they were free persons. So in Virginia law, if you was an American Indian, you were free. And if this guy was trying to sell them off as slaves, that means these particular group of American Indians were dark skinned. And as I read on, I'm gonna explain. You're gonna know that they dark skinned because they had a rule on who was to be considered slaves. You would think, okay, a DNA test maybe, or some family records. No, they went off very specific rules, and I'm gonna get to that. The Chancellor of Richmond Chancery District of Virginia, so this was in Richmond, Virginia, George Wythe, granted the petition. Wythe first insisted that Wright and her children physically resemble Native Americans. This placed the burden of proof on Hudgins to demonstrate that the Wrights were black and lawfully enslaved. So she had to resemble Native Americans in order for him to allow this to go on. More dramatically, Wythe insisted that in a freedom suit, the slaveholders always bore the burden of proof. Although the actual opinion Wythe wrote is lost, according to the summary given by the Supreme Court of Appeals of Virginia, Wythe ruled that freedom is an inherent blessing of which, according to the Virginia Constitution's Bill of Rights, they cannot be deprived. And therefore, since defendants have introduced no evidence of African descent, that they were free. So the slave owner who tried to sell them, Hudgins, tried to sell them by his own perception, by his own, what he could see with his own two eyes, wanted to sell them as African slaves. But she was like, hell no, we won't go. We are American Indians. So obviously she had to look copper colored, as they put in that book, under American. Copper colored people found here by the Europeans, now attributed to the Europeans who colonized this place. Or let's stop using that word colonize. That's too soft of a word. Let's call it invaders. That's what we call them. Invaders. Okay? Not colonizers. Stop with romanticizing an invasion and prisoners of war, POWs. Hudgins appealed this decision, so the guy, he ain't like it, so he gonna appeal it. Let me get the actual. He gonna appeal it. Hudgins appealed this decision in the highest court in Virginia. The Supreme Court of Appeals of Virginia granted the Wrights their freedom, but on a narrower ground than relied on by the Chancellor Wythe. The justice agreed that both judge and jury could make an initial determination from physical appearance whether a person was white, Native American, or black. The justices agreed that the Wrights resembled Native Americans. This placed the burden on Hudgins to prove that they were black. Hudgins did not have sufficient evidence, so the Wrights were freed. The Supreme Court rejected claims that slaveholders always bore the burden of proof in the freedom suits. The presumption of Virginia courts was that Native Americans were free, but that blacks were slaves. See, it's a label. A label is what makes you a slave. The black label. How did Judge Tucker justify these differing presumptions? Did he have any legal basis for his presumptions, or does prejudice all alone explain how Tucker interpreted the free and equal clause of the state constitution? So they based their decision solely on looks. So obviously they were dark skinned. and it had a certain type of hair. And you'll understand why I say this as I read this more. Judge Tucker, from the first settlement of the colony of Virginia to the year 1778. Let me reread this the way it should be read. From the first invasion of the colony of Virginia to the year 1778, all Negroes, Moors, and mulattoes, except Turks and Moors, in amity with Great Britain. Amity means they were in agreement. Let's see. Amity, A-M-I-T-Y. A-M-I-T-I. Amity can refer to a state of peaceful harmony. They were in peaceful harmony with Great Britain. So there were some Moors that were in harmony with Great Britain. Brought into this country by sea or by land were slaves. And by the uniform declarations of our law, the descendants of females remain slaves. To this day, unless they can prove a right to freedom by actual emancipation or by descent in the maternal line from an emancipated female. By the adjudication of the General Court in the case of Hannah and others against Davis, April term 1777, all American Indians brought into this country since the year 1705. Wait. Did y'all just read that? It just said all American Indians brought into this country since the year 1705 and their descendants in the maternal line are free. And here's the thing. I don't think y'all understand what I'm really saying here. All American Indians brought into this country. See, what they're talking about is the importation of their version of the American Indians into this land. Those people from Siberia, that Hollywood gave us as the true American Indian. That's what they're talking about here. Because I didn't make this up. I'm showing you this. By adjudication of the General Court in the case of Hannah and others against Davis, April term 1777, all American Indians brought into this country since the year 7. Wait, brought it? I thought they were already in America. How can they be brought in? See, that's when they brought them in, they labeled them American Indians to take the place of the true American Indians, your ancestors, brothers and sisters. And their descendants in the maternal line are free. Consequently, I draw this conclusion that all American Indians are prima facie free, and that where the fact of their nativity and descent in a maternal line is satisfactorily established, the birthing of proof, I'm reading that right, it says birthing of proof thereafter lies upon the party claiming to hold them as slaves. All white persons are and ever have been free in this country. If one evidently white be notwithstanding claimed as slave, the proof lies on the party claiming to make the other his slave. So they even say white people could be claimed as slave. He said, if a white one is claimed as a slave, they got a proof. Considered white. And I want y'all to know something. White doesn't always mean a skin color. And back then, it was a status. Okay? The character's distinction of color either disappears or becomes doubtful. Nature of the stamp. Wait a minute, I just moved this. Hang on, let me go back to where I was. I was too far ahead. White, be notwithstanding claim to be as a slave. The proof lies on the party claiming to make the other his slave. Nature has stamped upon the African and his descendants two characteristic marks. Besides the difference of complexion, y'all hear it? Besides the difference of complexion, which often remain visible long after characteristics distinction of color either disappears or becomes doubtful. They're telling you distinction of color becomes doubtful. So they're telling you African, white, American Indian, any one of those could be a slave. not so much body complexion. This appears to become doubtful. This is what they deemed an African: a flat nose and a woolly head of hair. So if you had woolly head, aka what people call nappy, and flat nose, upon these distinctions as connected with our laws, the burden of proof depends. Here's some examples. Suppose three persons, a black or mulatto, man or woman, with a flat nose and woolly head, a copper-colored person with long, jetty black straight hair. They're telling you a copper-colored person can have long, jetty black hair. And I know a lot. Most of them I know is out of New Orleans over there. Straight hair, and one with fair complexion, brown hair, not woolly nor inclining thereto, with a prominent Roman nose, were brought together before a judge upon a writ of habeas corpus on the ground of false imprisonment and detention and slavery. That the only evidence which the person detaining them in his custody could produce was an unauthenticated bill of sale from another person, that the parties themselves were unable to produce any evidence concerning themselves whence they came. How must a judge act in such a case? So what they're saying is, if they brought these people with these particular appearances and they have an authentic or produce an authenticated bill of sale, basically that is the proof that they're a slave. So that tells you right there, that kicks all the color boundaries out the door. But if they don't have that, they're going to use the rule of the flat nose, woolly hair. He must discharge a white person Indian out of the custody, and he must redeliver the black or mulatto person with the flat nose and woolly hair to the person claiming to hold him or her as a slave, unless the black person or mulatto could procure some person to be bound for him, to produce proof of his descent in the maternal line from a free female ancestor. This case shows by my interpretation how far the onus probandi may be shifted from one party to another, and is, I trust, a sufficient comment upon the case to show that I do not concur with the Chancellor in his reasoning on the operation of the first clause of the Bill of Rights, which was notoriously framed with a cautious eye to this subject, and was meant to embrace the case of free citizens or aliens only, and not by side wing to overturn the rights of property and give freedom to those very people whom we have been compelled from imperious circumstances to retain generally in the same state of bondage that they were in at the Revolution, in which they had no concern, agency, or interest. But notwithstanding this difference of opinion from the Chancellor, I heartily concur with him in the pronouncing the appellees absolutely free, and I am therefore of the opinion that decree be affirmed. Judge Rowan. The distinguishing characteristics of the different species of human race are so visibly marked that those species may be readily discriminated from each other by mere inspection only. In the case of a person visibly appearing to be a Negro, the presumption is in this country that he is a slave, and it is incumbent on him to make out his right to freedom. And in the case of the person visibly appearing to be a white man or an Indian, the presumption is that he is free, and it is necessary for his adversary to shew that he is a slave. James Fleming, Carrington, and Lyons president concurring. So people's freedom back then rested on someone's opinion of what the law said that a slave looked like. And that's crazy. Because we know people come from all walks and different shapes and sizes. Crazy. So what y'all think about that? Whew. That was strong. Yeah, she had knowledge of self. See what happened down there. They went around on this campaign to switch up the identities of the true American Indians. And this is why they came up with the if they look like this is who they are. Because you're not going to find a fair skin, too many fair skin, woolly haired people. Mm. You're not going to find it. Yeah, that's right. We've been here. Your people's been. You know, I know some of our people just don't want to accept that. They want the programming. They want the story of that they are descendants of slaves. They want that lie. And why do they want it? That's the big question. Why would you want that label? If I'm coming to you saying that you was never that should change your perspective of your family history and that you guys come from a divine people. Now, if I go as far as to say that your ancestors are the part of those 13 tribes that's listed in the Old Testament, the 12 tribes of Israel plus the 13th tribe, the Levites, which was the priesthood class. Would you believe me if I told you I was from them? Huh? Would you be? Oh, you're a Hebrew Israelite? No, I'm not. But when I read these things closely, I see the comparisons. I see the comparison. They said they crazy that they use physical characteristics in law, right? And this is why you're looked at the way they still doing physical characteristics carrying out law. That's why blacks tend to be the ones harassed by the police more than other groups of people. Hmm? If I told y'all, what if I told you those Indian customs, like the customs of the Indians is that they don't own land, right? Right? The American Indians, they don't own land. So they were sharing it with everybody because they didn't consider land ownership. The land belonged to God. But what if I told you I could narrow down most of our people here as the American Indians as that Levite priesthood class? What if I told you that? What do you think about that? Because looking at the customs, very similar to that Levite class. Go read about the Levite class. That was the only people that could not take ownership of land. That was the priesthood. They were the ones who took in all of the tithes from the 12 tribes. They each tribe brought their tithes into them and they kept them in a storehouse. They were the ones who took on the rituals when the people had to do their sacrifices, their yearly sacrifices. And sacrifices didn't mean killing an animal, it was bringing crops from their fields too as well. What if I told y'all that? Because when I look at the American Indian culture, the things that they study, I'm like, oh. They were smoking stuff. They, their peyote. I mean, in the Bible, they smoke stuff. Y'all didn't think y'all thought they didn't toot on anything back then? Y'all think tooting on stuff is new just in this area. No, it was part of rituals back then, just like in the Native American or American Indian culture. One day I'll pull the scripture out and show y'all. Note to self. Let me write that down. Note to self to show my listeners that they were smoking back then. Remember, I told y'all, look, take the word mandrake, Mandrake, and look that up and say mandrake in the Bible and go look at that scripture. What somebody said? And they couldn't believe it to hear. If I told y'all, possibly of the Levite class, which is the priesthood class that God used, and they sat at the center, like all the other tribes was on the north, south, east, west of, and then the Levites sat in the middle, protecting the Ark of the Covenant. Or the Ark of the Covenant was with them. But what if I also told y'all part of being the Ark of the Covenant was the people themselves? What if I told y'all that? That the Ark of the Covenant wasn't so much an object, but it was a people. The Ark of the Covenant. And whenever the Ark of the Covenant was taken, the people that took him had problems. The Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be a sacred chest that symbolized God's presence with the Israelites and served as a reminder of the covenant agreement between them. But the Ark of the Covenant was also a people because they were the only people that could touch that Ark of the Covenant. They were part of the Ark of the Covenant. Granny's root work. Smoking was part of the culture, ritual, peace pipe. Yes, right. And all these rituals that people are doing are just all bootleg forms of what we already had going on. That's it. All right, I think I gave y'all enough on that. Hudgins versus Wright, 1806. I would like to find the actual petition. That's what I want. Could they find that? The petition so I can read how that went? Because they only give you the decision. That's it, which I think that's telling when you don't see the actual thing. All right, with that being said, I think I gave you out enough, and I'm going to get on off here. I've said enough. Like I said, I'll announce the dates, the exact dates, and put the link up in my on my website for y'all to go ahead and get y'all seats at the next coming seminar in January. All right, with that being said, I'm out. Peace, prosperity, and extreme wealth. Peace. So now is what are you gonna do? You heard what I had to say? And most of all, let's keep it real. I'm only repeating what you've already said to yourself. That's why you're here. That's why you tune in every week. Yeah, I'm only repeating what you already said to yourself. I'm not saying anything new. I might be saying it in a different way. I might be saying it in a different tone. I might be saying it with some force differently. But for the most part, your spiritual self has been knocking you over the head, telling you, hey, what you doing? Hey, 3 o'clock in the morning, get up. Write that thing, that inspirational thought you had. Write it down. Or go act on it. And what do? You look at that clock, turn over, I'll get it later and go to sleep. Hakeem, how you know? How you know? You in my bedroom? You can see us? You spying on us? No. I ain't got to spy on you. I ain't got to know. I know how we are. I know what we really are, and we all operate the same way. We come from the same designer. We come from the same designer who designed us to be spiritual and powerful and divine. And the way we get our inspiration is when everybody's calmed down and all the negative energy is subsided. That's when, in the wee hours of the night, is when God can really speak to you and get you in that corner and start to talk to you. That's what happens. How you know I can't? Because it happens to me all the time. And a lot of times I listen, and then sometimes I don't. And I always regret when I don't.